Christian,
cultural
activist,
Beck Ewing.
Rebecca Ewing.
Hello, welcome to Faith Works. I'm Beck Ewing. I'm here with Paul Watson.
Hey, Beck, how's it going?
And today we're going to be talking about personhood of interest. South Carolina Conference focuses on the end of abortion. So I was there this past Saturday, and there was some pretty interesting stuff that went on there.
Yeah, I know. You've been talking about it for a few days. So tell me, what's the big news? What's the big thing that we all should know coming out of this conference?
Well, I could tell you something that I was really impressed by. You know, I've gone to a lot of different conferences and things like that, but to me, what really struck me was there seemed to be some real talk about strategy. I know that may seem like, what? So, strategy? But yeah, there was some talk about strategy and also a shift in strategy, namely the idea of interest in the personhood legislation.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, tell me, in the past, what was it about if it wasn't about strategy? Because that just kind of flummoxes me that we're like now talking about strategy. We've been doing this for a while.
Well, you know, usually when it came to strategy, it was talking maybe only amongst the different organizations that were specifically dealing with lobbying or something like that. And then the other, basically when you go to a lot of pro-life conferences, a lot of pro-life, roundtables and stuff, everybody's coming with their own ministries, and they're wanting to talk about their ministry. And, you know, they're wanting to say, like, this is what I can offer, and this is my little piece.
So like a big infomercial kind of thing.
Well, I mean, obviously, other type of people may not get to it. But yes, basically, they're there to raise awareness about what they do, which is completely fine. That is completely understandable. Okay. But when it comes to, like, maybe overall strategy of how are we going to move this ship, it's usually not detailed very much. I mean, sometimes they'll mention one particular thing that's happening at the moment, but not like this concerted effort idea.
So I think that one of the things that you're pointing out is a move from a bunch of people in the room who are talking about what I am doing to now there seems to be a shift in the conversation to what we can do together to move the ball forward in this area of abolishing abortion, the abomination of abortion once and for all.
Absolutely. You know, I really liked how you put that. It's not just about what I'm doing, what you're doing. How can we all really work together? And that, to me, is what is really needed. Unity, I think, is going to really make the difference when we focus on creating a movement and not, because, I mean, saving the one is good and doing our part of that is good. But if we're not working together, if we're not focusing on the movement as a whole, then we're going to be less powerful in general. And specifically, the thing that I really noticed was there was a real focus on personhood. And that just blew me away because in the past, you know, personhood's been around for like 20 years.
Right, exactly. It's nothing new.
Yeah, this whole concept's been around. So I personally have gone to tons of conferences. I've never heard personhood ever brought up unless it was like a specific personhood rally. But here I went and I heard not just it mentioned once, but it mentioned multiple times by various speakers and saying, this is the answer. This is what we should be going for. And I got stinking excited. I can tell you that.
Absolutely. You know, we've been doing a lot with talking about personhood on various other things that we're doing. And so it's definitely exciting that people are now using that language in mainstream conversations as part of everyday conversations, as opposed to this kind of, oh, those crazy people out there, they're fighting a losing battle. It's never going to happen. We've got to be incremental in our approach. I mean, those kind of things.
Well, you know, I think the main thing is to realize is that we have tried a lot of different things in the past, you know, and Eric Corcoran even mentioned it within his speech that that last legislative season, it seemed to be where there really was kind of a, you know, showdown between even people within the pro-life arena. And so basically, I think one of the things that I'm noticing is actually a uniting, and the interesting thing is what we're uniting around is personhood, and that is the thing that is really exciting me. So I know that we have a lot of friends that are in the incremental side of things. And there has been some good that has been passing some of our legislation. I think Dr. Robert Jackson that was speaking really kind of pointed that up. that there has been some good, but what really is going to actually end this is going to be a piece of legislation that challenges Roe versus Wade. And none of the legislation that has been brought up so far is going to do that.
Right.
So personhood would be a great part of that. So and we're going to delve into this, but first, everybody's kind of maybe wondering why we're calling this particular episode Personhood of Interest.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, have you seen the show Person of Interest? Have you seen that show?
Oh yeah, love the show. In fact, we're watching it through again as we're folding laundry at night, just to get caught up. It's one of my family's favorite shows.
So, in fact, I really love the actors that are in there, particularly Jim Caviezel. Did I say his name right?
Yeah,
Jim Caviezel.
Jim.
So I just love Jim Caviezel. He has such no other person in Hollywood, I would think, has more of a range. And you're like, wow, that's really saying something. Well, you have to understand, the man has played both the Son of God and also a serial killer. So,
Right.
So really, really different there. So anyway, I actually just for the first time really, was paying attention to what Person of Interest is. And so you have to hear the beginning of this particular clip to get a good sense of what's going on here. So listen to this.
All right.
You are being watched. The government has a secret system, a machine that spies on you every hour of every day. I know because I built it. I designed the machine to detect acts of terror, but it sees everything. Violent crimes involving ordinary people, people like you. Crimes the government considered irrelevant. They wouldn't act, so I decided I would. But I needed a partner, someone with the skills to intervene. Hunted by the authorities. We work in secret. You'll never find us. But victim or perpetrator, if your number's up, we'll find you.
Person of Interest. It comes up. So basically, I'm watching this. I'm like, whoa. So first off, yes, of course, we know the government's taking all this information, and I just saw what really hit me was the idea of irrelevant. And if you watch the series a little bit late, the intro first few episodes of the season, they talk about the idea of that there are certain crimes that are relevant because this takes all of the information of all of the bad things that can possibly happen. And because they built this in order to stop, mass terror and, acts of terrorism, they're like, we need to filter these out for this particular reason. And they put all these particular acts of violence and things that happen to everyday people as irrelevant. And so I saw two obvious correlations here, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one of them being is that here we are, the government is trying to, save all these people, save the people even in other countries, save people here, or fighting terrorism, all this different type of stuff. But somehow the unborn, the people, the smallest and most innocent among all of us, their deaths are irrelevant. So they have the data, they know it's happening, but their deaths are irrelevant. So that's number one. And so we can all jive with that. But here's the secondness, especially when it comes to personhood. So the pro-life community is trying to save all these babies. There's been over 60 million babies that have been murdered since Roe versus Wade.
Good night. Wow.
60 million. And so, by the way, I understand, I totally do understand the argument that if we abolish abortion, if we make it illegal, it won't stop all abortion. And so we need to get the heart. That is a completely valid point. We need to reach the heart. Absolutely. But let me, and there will be something afterwards. But let me tell you, the difference between the amount of babies killed before Roe versus Wade and after Roe versus Wade.
Yes.
Come on,
totally
people.
Different.
Let's not act like abolishing abortion won't stop any abortions. Of course it will. It'll stop a lot of abortions. So anyway,
that's right.
So that's one. But as we're in this particular fight for the pro-life arena, where a lot of the argument has been, well, we want to save the baby. So if we put in these exceptions for rape, incest, and life of mother, and also maybe handicapped and stuff like that children, then we're going to be able to really get this legislation passed, and that'll be great. Well, the thing is, what about them? Are these babies irrelevant?
I don't know if you've ever had a chance to like even watch the Special Olympics or just seen like so many different artists and things like that who are persons who might happen to have some sort of thing that we might call a disability. And that's just going off of the ones that we can see. I mean, there are other things out there of people who are incredible survivors, who survive anxiety, who survive depression, who survive so many different kind of things. And so I really think that when we start saying, okay, this group of people is worth living, and then these people, they're going to have it so hard that their life is going to be a burden to them, and their life is going to be a burden to society. And when we do that, when we make those decisions, we're actually cutting off so many things that could actually happen. I mean, I remember going to university, and there was a man there. His name was Matt, who came to university. He was blind, legally blind, walked with a cane, could not see anything, and he was an incredibly gifted concert pianist. I mean, just wonderful. And if they had been able to detect that in the womb, and his parents had made the heinous decision to terminate his life because of his blindness, we would not have been given the gift of his music. And I think it's really, and there's no way in the womb to determine someone's potential.
Oh, yeah.
And so humanity should be judged based on potential, not based on those things that some group of people might deem would hold them back.
Absolutely. And that was something, and interestingly enough, again, this is something that is brought up so much more this particular conference than the other ones, was just the value of the life of those that we have been kind of throwing under the bus a lot when it comes to the pro-life movement. Now, so when I was there, I was able to speak and have little interviews with various of the speakers that were coming there. There were some representatives from the various crisis pregnancy centers, including Daybreak and the Carolina Pregnancy Center. There was Mark Baumgartner from the Moment of Hope Ministries. There was also representatives for the SAFL, so in other words, the Sidewalk Advocates in the Charleston area. Right. There were people from representing for the South Carolina Citizens for Life, and also from Personhood, Palmetto Family Council. So there was a lot of heads that were there, but one particular person that has become a bit of a mover and shaker in the pro-life community, but yet he doesn't really lead specifically as far as being a CEO or anything of a particular ministry. That's Dr. Robert Jackson, and I absolutely loved interviewing him. Yeah. And also interviewing and just hearing what he had to say.
That's right. You let me have a chance to hear some of the clips, and the guy's amazing. Do you have any of those clips that you're wanting to play for us now here on this podcast?
Yes, I think I did.
There you go.
I did, Paul. So, I think one of the things that for him, and again, it goes back to the shock of strategy that seemed overall the theme for this whole life conference, that there was an agreement of 3 different points of strategy when it came to the area of pro-life and where we needed to go. So basically what I went and I asked some questions to everybody, and this, let me just start playing you a little bit of a clip from Dr. Jackson's.
How do we do it?
Well, it's a 3-pronged attack. First of all, we've got to pray. Don't let anybody be fooled. This is a spiritual battle for the life of the unborn child and for the soul of the mothers. And if we're not willing to commit ourselves to serious, concerted, long-term prayer, we're not going to win this battle.
I agree with that. And that's what we're trying to do through Truth Squared Live as well.
So that was actually one of the first things that was really talked a lot about, was the idea of prayer. It's like, Personhood, South Carolina said they wanted to be able to raise prayer. Every other constantly that was the theme. And of course, I'm sitting there here, Paul. And,
Right.
as an anchor for the GC Squared Live, and also with GC Square Prayer going, oh good, that's why I'm here. And
Exactly. It turned out that you were in the right place at the right time. Fancy that.
absolutely. And so, Paul and I, you and I, we've been doing episodes Tuesdays at 7:30 a.m., Wednesdays at 3:15 Eastern, 12:15 Pacific, and then also Thursday 9:15 Eastern as well. But anyway, so we've started this whole show to help be able to catalyze prayer. And I have this whole strategy, and I think I should probably do a separate podcast to be able to share the my whole diabolical plan to be able to create prayer movement. But the whole point of the prayer movement has been to really network a lot of this together and prayer movement. So anyway, let's move forward in what he was trying to say.
Second thing is we have to be willing to get in the mud and the mire, root hog or die, with the mothers, with compassionate Christian ministry. And that's what the Crisis Pregnancy Center Ministries is all about. It's a redemptive ministry that brings the gospel message to moms who are in crisis. We provide all the material needs, which is what often brings them to our door, but we have to share the gospel with them, because if they're not transferred from the domain of darkness into the kingdom of God's beloved Son by the gospel message, then in a year's time, they'll be back to our door again with the same issues in their life.
Right.
So that's why the Crisis Pregnancy Ministry has to be a redemptive ministry.
So it has to be Great Commission along with our Great Commandment work.
That's right. And then the third thing.
So the next thing is that he talked about that. He made a big deal about the redemptive work, because he also gave a speech at that particular time, and this is something that was also a big theme, was the fact that we need to be incorporating the gospel with our efforts more, because we are not going to really see a lasting change unless we change hearts.
I think that one of the things we're seeing here is that if we were to look at it, we're trying to play both the air game and the land game. So I had a friend of mine describe it that way. He says that the prayer part of it is like the air battle. You want to have your airplanes going in. You want them to be able to go in front of the troops, see what's going on. There's that side of it. And then the land game is that changed life. Because as it says, in different arenas, in Scripture, it talks about we want to have fruit and fruit that lasts. So it's not enough to stop one abortion. We need to see a life changed so that we never have to come back to this point of crisis again. We may end up stopping an abortion, but then we haven't dealt with the systemic issue of a broken, fallen world right now, or the choices that led up to that.
Absolutely. In fact, that's something that Dr. Jackson actually said in his particular speech, and also to me at one particular time. We're basically saying is that if we don't change the heart of people, then they're just going to come back to us again. So, they're going to come into our crisis pregnancy centers and saying like, oh, I made this, I've been having sex with my boyfriend or whatever it is, and I became pregnant, please help me. And we help them, and then they go away. They're good, their lives aren't changed. The reasons why they even were there haven't changed. So it's very likely they could go out, do the same things, and have to be back to be able to have more help. And so again, to me also, this goes to the accusation of, oh, if we got rid of abortion, that means we would have suddenly thousands and thousands more of unwanted children. Well, you do realize that if abortion and life is now valued, that if we actually change the hearts of people through the gospel, that perhaps that we would not be seeing really the things that lead to a lot of unwanted pregnancy.
Right, exactly.
So like I said, Brennan Eshelman from the Daybreak Ministries was making that point that we really need to include the gospel. And again, this is why, you and I, Paul, we're looking to see a movement of God. And that is something for me that I think makes us very different than maybe, some other people that are just looking to be able to make a pro-life movement in the sense of that we want to stop abortion, things like that. And it's like, to me, this is all inclusive.
Yeah, when you're mobilizing the prayer, when you're mobilizing the actual changed life, you're going to change all aspects of life. You're going to end up impacting poverty. You're going to impact homelessness. You're going to impact abortion. You're going to impact drug and alcohol abuse. You're going to impact gambling. I mean, all of these different things that cause terrible problems in our society are going to be dealt with in a healthy way and dealt with in a systemic way, not punitive, like we're punishing you if you do these things. We're going to write you a ticket for $1,000, whatever it may be. But instead, it's coming from the heart, which, as you and I know, is where the only lasting change can come from.
Although I do have to say, I do want to punish people that really do wrong. Like, for instance, killing people
no
and
doubt.
stuff like that. But yeah, no, the point is that we have separated these issues and acted like they're totally different things. Like, over here is, abortion, over here is, different crisis centers, and over here is gospel initiatives. So the church, and then actually later on, Andrew Dion from Personhood kind of indicates this, that so we have the nonprofits taking care of the abortion issue, and then we have churches that are taking care of the gospel issue. And so these things have been unnecessarily separated. And so what we have is that the power of the gospel in the church is not integrating, the transformative power is not integrating into these movements and actually changing people's lives.
Exactly.
And then also, we don't see the church being actually active in a lot of these pro-life movements. So a lot of pro-life doesn't actually end up being evangelical. So in fact, that was an amazing quote you played me. So I'm excited that we're about to get to this one. Well, I'm glad you're excited to be able to, as we're about ready to do this. So basically, Robert Jackson really pointed out something that was staggering to me. He said that there was, he's a part of basically helping fund different venues, and just saying that there's a lot of ministries out there, a lot of pro-life, a lot of nonprofit ministries that say they're evangelical, but they actually don't share the gospel. And so that's why he was pushing it and saying, like, we've got to be redemptive. So here's that little clip. Wanted to show you that.
Redemptive ministries. And I'll tell you a sad secret. The man who runs the South Carolina Christian Foundation, that raises money for that foundation, told me some years ago, he said, Robert, we give money to over 60 ministries in Spartanburg County that claim to be evangelical ministries. And he said, to me, that means they share the gospel. And he said, we evaluate all of those ministries before we give them money. And he said, I'm going to tell you the honest truth. There's only 2 ministries in all of the county that actually do share the gospel.
Wow.
I said, well, who are they?
That's
he
amazing.
said, the Carolina Pregnancy Center and Child Evangelism Fellowship.
Wow. Can you believe that? 2.
Out of the whole bunch.
Out of the whole bunch. And let me tell you, there's a lot of them out there. So, and here we are. These are supposed to be Christian evangelical organizations, and they're not sharing the gospel, and they're wondering why we're not seeing a transformation of our culture. So we're not seeing overall in churches a big, huge evangelical push, and we're not doing it to the people when we go out there when it comes to these things. No wonder we're not seeing like a huge difference there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you divorce the activity that is taking care of people's lives from the power of the gospel, then you're denying our society the right to lasting change. You're putting a Band-Aid on a arterial bleed and hoping that it's going to save the life in the long run, and that is just ridiculous.
Absolutely. And so, as a part of this, so, it's like I said, 3-tier prong system. The first one was prayer. Second one is more gospel, redemptive kind of ministries. But, that as a part of that, he did mention something really interesting about disciple making. And so, and the fact of that we need to raise a generation. So let's listen to this part.
Lots of folks involved. Unfortunately, they're all gray-headed.
So a lot of all gray hair that are involved.
And I'm telling you, you and I need to do some disciple making. We need to start helping folks like my daughter and Miss
Exactly.
Olivia and her husband and Miss Rebecca over here. And we need to start gathering in the next generation.
He did. He called you out.
Because before long, the rest of us will be asleep. And if we don't do some disciple making and bring in the next generation, who's going to hold up the banner in 10 more years, brothers and sisters? We need to pray that God will raise up a whole army of energetic, enthusiastic folks like Miss Claire. Bless you, Miss Claire.
So basically the idea is that, that they need to get into the mindset of, and this is the way in even a lot of our churches, we get this idea of power that, there's certain people who have been running the show for so long, but they're not taking the time to really invest in the younger generation. And so he makes a really good point. Now, of course, that is what our initial understanding of disciple making is just teaching the next generation of people how to be able to do this. But since I've come on with Contagious Disciple Making with Paul here, I also come to understand and realize that that's what we've been mainly doing in discipleship here in the States. It's just about teaching our children or teaching our younger people how to be able to step up in leadership. The reality is that this kind of disciple making can be across the board when we do evangelism.
Exactly. We could be doing it every day. And we've got lots of examples in Scripture where they did a really good job of raising up the next generation, but then that generation dropped the ball. And we don't see any leaders come after that. I mean, one that comes to mind immediately is Moses. Moses raised up Joshua, and Joshua was an incredible leader. But when Joshua died, there was nobody like him. I mean, and when we see that from Samuel was an incredible judge, but for whatever reason, what he received was not passed on to the next generation, and as a result, Israel descended into chaos. And if we do not focus on disciple making and making lasting fruit in the United States around these issues, we may have one generation that abolishes abortion, and the next generation that lets it go, and a third generation that brings it back. So if we aren't careful to
that
pass,
sounds exhausting.
It is. If we're not careful to pass these things on, then all we've done is we built on a foundation that then the building gets ripped off again, and another building may be put on.
That is a really good point, Paul, because it reminds me in the Old Testament as well as it continues. Whenever you're reading about the different kings that comes through, it's like there was a king and he was really awesome and he got rid of all of the idolatry and the groves and all the places where we would worship the false gods, where they would, by the way, they would burn children.
Yep.
That was one of the major practices, and that was one of the major reasons why God hated it so much. So anyway, they got rid of all that stuff and everyone's so happy. Well, then they turn around and their son comes after them and establishes it all over again.
That's right.
And you're just like, what? You didn't teach your kid? Like, why did that happen? And the thing, you're so right that we could be in danger doing the same thing. If you think it's exhausting trying to abolish abortion, imagine doing all this to abolish abortion and then turning around because we didn't teach our children to love life like we do, and then it comes right back.
Well, and the big problem is that the subsequent generation doesn't get taught why. And that's what creates the problem. It's just one generation looks at the other and says, this is right, do it. Now, they had to struggle with the why when they were fighting for everything and making it work and making it happen. But then they just legislated it to the next generation saying, this is a law and it's the law and you should follow the law. And they never came around to the generation and say, hey, the reason we have this is because this is the way it was, and we didn't value life, and this is the way it should be. And so we've got to pass on not just the legislation, but the why behind it. So making disciples actually passes the why from one generation to the next, so that the legislation that is passed from one generation to the next can actually be sustained throughout the generations.
Right. Now, here's where the big thing came for me. So all this is great. And actually, even Dr. Jackson said this one time, and I'm going to try not to steal his thunder, but basically he's saying, like, I know we all like to talk about praying and spreading the gospel, is that, but then we also have to talk about the third thing. And so this is what he said in my interview with him about the third thing. So first prayer, 2 gospel redemptive ministries, and then the third thing.
Is our legislative efforts. We have to be dogged and determined to help our legislators who are in the mushy middle understand that we as God-fearing Christian people have to push for a complete and total commitment to the personhood of the unborn child, and that we're not going to capitulate, and we're not going to be satisfied with piecemeal legislation that allows for some children to be spared and others to be eliminated by abortion. But we are pushing for the complete and total elimination of abortion in South Carolina.
Well, that sounds like what you're referring to is, first off, that usually there are exceptions for the cases of rape, incest, and life of mother. So it sounds like what you're saying is that those particular lives are just as important as the others.
Every life in the mother's womb is special and created in the image of God. And we're not willing to sacrifice some lives just because the circumstances of their conception may be difficult or compromising. Those children's lives are just as special as all the rest, and they deserve to be protected.
So it also sounds like you were referring to personhood legislation. Is that what you were referring to? Are you familiar with that legislation?
I'm very familiar with that legislation, and I'm in full support of the personhood bill.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think it's going to take for us to be able to see something like personhood passed?
It'll take a lot of praying. It's going to take a lot of organizing. It's going to take a lot of education, because a lot of people don't understand why we are opposed to those exceptions to life. And if we don't educate Christian people, we don't educate our legislators, we're never going to achieve that objective.
So just a couple more questions for you. How do you think the body of Christ, so in other words, churches and things like that, how can they be more involved in this kind of thing?
Well, first of all, it's going to take a lot of effort on the part of pro-life people who are educated to share biblical truth with the average person in the pew. Because truth be known, so many of them are in agreement with the exceptions.
I thought that was.
And if we're not educating them about why the exceptions are not acceptable, we're never going to win this battle.
I love the fact that he says that the exceptions are not acceptable. Like, I just love the fact that he was saying that there's many in the pews that, they agree. They're agreeing with the exceptions, and it's saying that's not okay. That's not enough. So I just love the fact, and the thing is that he's not the only one talking about personhood. In fact, at the particular event, there was an actual personhood representative there, Andrew Dion, and he had a longer speech, in which later on I'd like to dive into some of the good stuff that he was talking about. I was comparing a lot of Nazi Germany with how it and the church, how it was reacting to them, to how it is now. And so there were some really great things. But one of the things that Andrew really pointed up was the fact of the idea of momentum.
Okay.
Is that now we see momentum. But before we did that, before even Andrew came up, Eric Corcoran from the Palmetto Family Council, he was there.
Oh, really?
And I was, yes. And so he was pointing out about, he was the one pointing out about how the previous the previous legislative time period was kind of rough. And I was really kind of so pleased by his open support of personhood. Here's some of the stuff he said.
And preach the gospel to every Christian. That includes lawmakers, even that much more so. This past legislative session was not a good one. It was very divided, even amongst the pro-life community. You had personhood, you had dismemberment abortion.
Yep.
But I want to say something right now. I would almost want to have put on record.
By the way, he is being put on record.
Nice, well done.
And that is, I thank God for people like you taking a stand for personhood. I thank God for people who put the hours in when nobody else is really thinking about it. They're more concerned about the energy crisis.
So, the fact that he, first off, says that, he's thankful for people actually supporting personhood. So again, I know that the Palmetto Family Council was supporting the dismemberment bill, and that there was a bit of a back and forth between those who were supporting personhood as well. And so I just really commend him for also speaking out for personhood and saying that he really appreciated them. So basically, let me find that other clip here somewhere. But basically, that he actually came out a lot with support for personhood. In fact, there was this one particular point that I really was so happy with. He said this.
You can see our front lines, which is anyone who's 18 years of age or older and wants to know what is happening. Whether it's personhood or some major legislative issue, we fight sex trafficking, we fight a number of issues.
Personhood, he named
There you
personhood.
go.
The point is, you need to know, I think it's ridiculous that people don't even know about scstatehouse.gov.
So anyway, as he was going in, he actually says that, because he has the Palmetto Family Council has the front lines, has the Nehemiah Network, and he's basically saying that now they're going to be pushing personhood legislation and that they're going to be informing about this particular issue. And I'm just so excited about that we can have that kind of unity that's happening. And by the way, if you happen to listen to anything that he says, he was born in Ireland, and if you just speak to him personally, you hardly ever hear it. But apparently when he gets up to speak, he suddenly sounds like it's from from Ireland, straight off the boat. With this nice little lilt
You can put
and
it
everything.
together.
But it was so good to see this momentum happen.
It's really nice to. It's interesting when you see that, because what we've been seeing is you have this ministry doing their thing, like we said at the beginning. This ministry doing their thing. This ministry doing their thing. This ministry doing their thing. And the fact that there isn't all-out war between the ministries, we chalk that up to, we're walking in unity, And in reality, what we just have is no war. There's a difference between having a peace and and not being in unity. Okay, you can be peacefully separate in all your rooms. I tell you, when I have 3 kids, and when they're having a bad night and they're picking and fighting at one another and everything, then finally their mom and I have a trouble. We're like, all of you, go to your rooms. And they all go up to their rooms, slam door, slam door, slam door. They're in their rooms by themselves, and we have peace. Okay? But we...
Quote, unquote. And really what we're saying is we have quiet,
We have
right?
quiet, but we do not have unity. And in that moment, we don't have family. We don't really have... We have quiet, but we don't have peace. And we don't have unity. And so what we're saying that happens with Christian ministries all the time.
That's
and so
true.
what he's trying to commit to is to say, look... We need to be working together. And that seems to be the big shift in this conference from previous ones, is that I has become we, and we're realizing that we're not going to be able to accomplish the goal of overturning Roe v. Wade if we're not working together.
And in fact, and just also saying that we are going to actually work on that cause. So, again, what I'm seeing here, and I could tell it, it's like, feel it in the air. It's like that Lord of the Rings quote. It's like, I feel it in the air.
That's right.
A changing of the season, where now people are actually interested in the personhood legislation. So, we had Dr. Jackson speaking out for it. We had Eric Corcoran from Palmetto Family Council speaking out for it. And then also, of course, the actual personhood representative was there, Andrew. And like I said, he was talking about the momentum. So something that I thought that some things that he said, it was absolutely true. Just pointing out the different things where we can see more and more people coming on board when it comes to personhood. Here's what he says.
Right now for personhood in the state of South Carolina, the 2 most recent efforts both cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee. That may not sound exciting to you, but that's the first time that's happened.
It almost made it to the floor.
Legislation has been there for 20 years. So to get out of committee is a big deal.
It is.
Larry Martin was voted out of office, and we feel like his hindrance of personhood was one of the reasons he was voted out of office. Richard Cash, our champion for personhood, was elected
woot woot.
To the State House, and so and into the Senate, and so we are happy to have him there. Every member of the executive branch, the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, are on board with personhood.
Now, why is this so important? Well, I believe it's in Iowa, or was it Indiana? Oh my goodness, I am like brain farting right now, but basically, one of those two states, they passed a heartbeat bill in that particular area, and their attorney general, though, has been refusing to uphold it.
Wow.
And so because of so that is actually why it's important for your governor, your attorney general, and your lieutenant governors to be in support of those particular efforts. And the thing is, we do. Henry McMaster, Alan Wilson, and then also Bryant has all pledged the fact that they're going to be in support of this. So we are in even a stronger position to uphold this kind of legislation than other people have already passed more strongly legislation that we have.
Exactly.
So anyway, he continues.
And I think that's where it's good to remember that our elected officials serve us. And that if they aren't upholding the laws that are legally passed, then they do not deserve their position. And we, as the people, are responsible to remove them and to put people into power that will uphold the laws that were legally passed in the first place.
But thankfully, we wouldn't have to do that with some of the people that we have in power now. But he continues with the idea of the momentum.
And have all signed pledges that if it gets to them,
they sign the pledges.
They'll sign it, or if the Attorney General has to defend it, he'll defend it in court. Senate District 20 GOP primary was won by a personhood pledge signer who was endorsed by another personhood pledge signer. Now he goes up in November in the special election, so pray for Senate District 20. Go to personhood.
So again, I'm going to actually sit on this for just a half a second here, because this is in around my area. This is the South Carolina State Senate seat 20. So when we're talking about, this is an issue that I've been talking about all the time on GC Squared Live. And so you can go back, look at some of the episodes. I have an interview with the guy that ended up winning the runoff election.
Yeah, Benjamin Dunn.
For the GOP. Benjamin Dunn, yes. So you can go into BeckEwing.com and be able to see it, to see and listen to that interview, including the spots where there's a specific clip that just has his stances on pro-life and things like that. So you can go and take a look at that. But basically, why is this so important? Andrew was just talking about the fact that there were only a few, we had gotten past the committees, which is a huge deal. We almost got to the floor. We were literally only a couple of votes from the different senators
right there
to get it onto the floor. And so the idea is that before, this particular seat did not have a personhood supporter. So the idea that we could have another personhood supporter, and Benjamin Dunn, let me just point out, at least to me, does not seem just another person who says he's for personhood or says he's for pro-life and then not going to do, because he said things like, I'm going to push it in committees, out of committees, into every step.
Nice.
So, and I have that on record. So,
well done.
Right. And the thing is that he won against a reverend who is a children's home worker. And I have on good authority for the people, and I have good authority for the people who are in personhood, that the fact that Reverend John Haller, the one who didn't want to abolish abortion, who said that if we did, then there would be thousands and hundreds of unwanted throwaway children, by the way.
Yeah, I can't believe he said that.
Right, I know, it's completely... It floors me that he would be working with children and then be calling them at the same time unwanted and throwaway.
Right.
It is just... would you look at one of your kids, sir, and tell them that?
Yeah, the inconsistencies in his behavior and in his word before he's even elected are enough to make me go, not having my vote. Not that I'm living there, but
Yeah, if you were to move from Oregon, Paul. So, I've heard from various sources that, personhood was one of the main reasons why that Benjamin Dunn won over John Haller for this. And so as we're coming in against Harpootlian, a quite powerful Democrat that unfortunately also does not recognize the value of life, which is much more unfortunate to me than the fact that he is a Democrat. So this is really about life here at this point.
It's about life. It's not about party.
Yeah, right, exactly. Which, again, that's why, hey, John Haller, he's Republican. So apparently it does not matter what party you're a part of. You believe what you believe. So anyway, this is another major factor when it comes into the momentum. So we have all these people, and now even within our communities, we're starting to talk about personhood. And that is what I got out of this entire conference. It's just that there's an excitement. There is, how can I say it? There is a commitment to intentionality that I just, really I'm so excited about. And so definitely everybody out there be praying for God to continue to be developing unity and to be developing, an actual real strategy to see abortion ended, not some type of theoretical 50 years from now, but trying to abolish abortion right away, and also bring the gospel back into this issue again. So, as we're coming up into the last little bit, I wanted to play also this might play in a place where I didn't want it to, so give me 1 second. But basically, there is another part inside of Person of Interest where he talks a little bit about the idea of the irrelevant. So I don't know if you have seen it. Have you seen
Pretty
any
powerful.
of this? How much have you seen into the show, Paul?
Oh, I've watched probably 5 or 6 seasons. I'm not sure how many there are in there, but I've watched most of them, I think, but the last 2.
Okay, well, it's not exactly the Land Before Time series, so I don't think it's really that much farther than what you had. So, okay, there's this one particular part though of the second episode where it's supposed to be a flashback between Finch, the guy who creates the machine that collects all the information, and apparently somebody was working with. And I do believe what happens is that he finds out information about that guy's, family and how they were hurt and stuff like that. And so you see Finch coming in, having his friend and partner finding out that Finch knew all along that it might happen, that something bad could have happened to his family. So this is what you hear.
When were you going to tell me?
I wasn't going to tell you, I guess. I'd rather I didn't know myself.
All these people and this damn machine, you knew that someone wanted to harm them, kill them, and you did nothing.
You knew what we were building here. This thing looks for plotters, for schemers. It looks for malicious intent. We built it to stop terrorists before they could act. But a machine doesn't understand the difference between those crimes that are relevant to national security and the ones that are irrelevant.
Irrelevant? So you taught it the difference? You want to play God? Is that
No,
it?
I don't. That's the whole point. There are exactly 8 people in the world that know that this thing exists. If anyone else ever found out there'd be such an outcry, they'd turn it off. The intelligence the machine produces has already foiled a half-dozen major terrorist plots.
How are we supposed to live with this, knowing that someone out there needs help?
Well, we don't have to. I've coded the machine. Every night at midnight, it deletes the irrelevant list.
Wow.
We didn't build this to save somebody. We built it to save everybody.
Wow. Look how much is in that little bit right there, Paul.
Exactly. Pretty powerful, huh?
Oh my goodness. So that moment where the guy looks at, his friend looks at Finch and says, you knew that they were going to be hurt and you did nothing?
Yeah.
And of course I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, so again, 2 different parallels. Our government and abortion itself. So all these unborn that are being killed, they're irrelevant to national security. So it's okay for them to be murdered and stuff because they're irrelevant to the bigger issues of state and to the nation. They're not of value to the nation, so therefore all these individuals are irrelevant.
Well, and that goes back to even looking at our current political system. The babies that are being murdered right now do not have the ability to vote. They do not have the ability to speak up for themselves. In fact, it'll be generations before these babies that are born will be able to vote for anyone. And so it's really easy for someone to sit there and say, well, I don't have to speak up for their rights because they're not going to be voting for me. They're not going to be clamoring for my interests. So let me just do what the people tell me to do instead of what is right and speaking up for those who can't speak up for themselves.
Right, exactly. And then the other part that I thought of again is at the beginning I was saying I see two parallels. The one from the government to to abortion in general, then also our efforts as a pro-life movement and towards the ones that are like of rape, incest, and life of mother. Like, those particular ones, it makes me think of that because we come up with these strategies and, we're trying to say, well, we're trying to save all these people. You said, but you knew these other ones were in danger. And it's like, oh, well, they're irrelevant. So are we saying that these, the babies that are rape, that were conceived in rape and incest and maybe are handicapped, that they are irrelevant, that we're not going to try to save them, because we're more focused on bigger and better things. And at the very end of that, he says, oh, well, and the guy turns around and says, what, are you trying to play God? And he's like, oh, no, I'm not. It's like, yes, you are.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're trying to pick and choose who has the right to live and who doesn't based on incomplete data.
Well,
based on things that we don't know.
Yeah, incomplete data, and then also because of the fact that the sin of their fathers, it's like they definitely didn't do anything. And that is what we're saying. Any pro-life legislation that does not include the cases of, that does not allow for the life of those that are conceived in rape and incest, and those that, and protect those that are handicapped, anyone that does it is doing that very thing. It's picking and choosing who deserves to live and who deserves to die, who deserves to be protected and who doesn't deserve to be protected. And we as a body of Christ shouldn't put up with that anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree.
And so at the end, at the very end, he even says, and this is something again that really just jarred me. He's like, so at the end, at every midnight, it just deletes the irrelevant list. And I was just like, whoa. And that's what we do. We delete them from our memory. These children that die, we just delete them. It's like, they never existed. And we think that by just forgetting that we can just turn a blind eye to what was done. And, it made me think of that story in the Holocaust where the church...
Yeah,
I
was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Right. The church that was near the train tracks, and one time during a church service, they hear trains going by and hearing crying people out there, help, save us, and just crying and everything. And they're like, what's going on? And so they found out that was basically people who were being taken to the concentration camps during the Holocaust time.
Yeah.
And so they're like, what do we do about this? And they prayed about it. And so they came by and they heard, please help us. And they're like, oh, Lord, what do we do? And they're praying, Lord, what do we do about this? And well, eventually what happened is that when the trains come by, they decided what they would do is simply sing louder. So as these trains are coming by, help, save us, there's like, oh, an amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And that is what we are doing when it comes to these children.
Right.
It's like while these, children who are being murdered because and really completely disregarded because they're too small or they're maybe possibly handicapped or they were raped or incest conceived, while they're dying, we're singing the praises of ourselves because we managed to pass legislation that protected everybody else but them. Well, actually, not even close to everybody else, but you know what I mean. It's just like while we should be glad that we've made some progress, we cannot be satisfied Like the guy inside the
Right.
clip, we should be looking at ourselves and saying, how can we live with ourselves knowing
Yes.
that there are people that are dying and we're not doing anything about it?
Yeah, we have to do something. My dad has a quote that he always says. He will quote like the Great Commission, and Jesus says, "All authority on heaven and earth has been given unto me." And those kind of things. And he often will look right at me and says, "Paul, all means all, and that's all it means. One less than all is not all." And we believe that all people are created equal, that all people are created in the image of God, and that all people deserve a chance to live their life for good.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, that's the gospel that we serve too, that whosoever will believe will be saved. Whosoever calls upon
right.
the name of the Lord shall be saved. He cares for each and every one. So who's to say who are we to pick and choose based on any other factor other than they're here, so we should love them. They're here for a purpose. And so, and really, in the end, these rape and incest conceived children, they are in essence a opportunity for redemption. Life always
right.
gives us opportunity for redemption. And so,
That's right.
anyway, so that is what's going on with the Life Conference and how how that's somehow tied into Person of Interest. But anyway, so like I said, pray moving forward that we'll be able to further develop these alliances and that there will continue to be this movement that will actually see movement of prayer and of action towards these particular issues and get the church more involved, which is something that I'd like to be able to talk about more later, but we don't have time to talk about it today.
Yep, coming to the end of our time.
So thanks, Paul, for joining me, and this is Faith Works. Go out there and change your world.